She's at class trying to decide what she's going to do next and eating her McDonald's. Her friends are going through her things and they find the baby in the trash bag and they call the police. What is the deal with all these girls who we thought she was pregnant, but we didn't say anything. And then later we went into her room to like see if she'd actually had the baby and lo and behold, there it is in the trash bag. Well, girls, if you knew that she was pregnant, why didn't any one of you say, Lakin, is everything okay? Instead of talking about her behind her back and being like, Lakin's getting fat. Why didn't they do anything? Why didn't they say anything? Why didn't they help her? Why weren't they friends? Instead, they're snooping around her room, finding all this stuff and calling the police on her instead of being true friends that could have helped her and helped the life of that baby. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise. We have a great show for you today, but here's the thing. There's several stories that came up this week that I'm just not super invested in, and we have to talk about it because we're going to talk about it, but I'm going to try to get that out of the way. And the first story, really the main story that I'm like, must we, is the situation with Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, and oh no, their relationship has ended. I mean, they were together for 19 years, so people are like, can you believe it? And I'm like, yes, I can. This was never a union that I just had set my heart on. Here we have the Ice Queen and her tiny tot, Keith Urban. And he seemed like an emotional cripple from the get-go, and she seemed like a complete Ice Queen. So I just didn't really feel like this was a meeting of lovers. Like, Disney's not going to make a movie about the love story where the princess has to have a cocaine clause where she's basically going to pay off the prince not to snort the cocaine off the baseboards. I just feel like no part of me ever thought that this was going to be something that I would go to my grave and on my dying breath, I'd be able to be like, but at least Keith Urban made it with Nicole Kidman. I mean, I just didn't think I'd ever live to see the day that they wouldn't get divorced, right? This is just like, was an obvious. That relationship always seemed like it was going to be fraught with difficulties. And part of the reason is that their whole love story is publicly based on the fact that she basically pulled him up out of the sewer, set him beside her and said, now aren't you lucky? And now he's supposed to his whole live long life struggle to meet her expectations of like, well, you know, I went from this terrible relationship where I was stuck in Scientology, had abandoned my kids in that crippled world and that crippled psyche. I've stumbled out and I've been trying to make my way in the world. And then I pull you up. I've already had a lot of trauma over here. I can't also have trauma with you, but oh, damn, you're an addict. All right, well, I'm going to throw you into some rehab. I'm going to pay you to stay sober. And hopefully you cannot disappoint me like that other guy did, you know, who's way more well known than you, by the way. Okay, everyone likes Tom Cruise. No one knows who you are. Just don't disappoint me. That's what the whole thing felt like.
Barely 4 months into our marriage, my addictions that I'd done really nothing about blew our marriage to smithereens, and I went into the Betty Ford Center for 3 months. 4 months into a marriage, I'm in rehab for 3 months with no idea what was going to happen to us. And if you want to see what love in action really looks like, give that a whirl. Nick pushed through every negative voice, I'm sure even some of her own, and she chose love. And here we are tonight, 18 years later.
Now, I think for many years, knowing what an addict he was grateful to her help. But in the last couple of years, we have heard him on numerous occasions not being so grateful to her good name. Because he kind of wants to be known for his own life and his own accomplishments instead of always being the husband of Nicole Kidman, who she had to put into rehab 3 months into their marriage. That's always brought up every time, and I don't blame him for feeling resentful about that, but I also have to ask you, man, what have you necessarily done for society, for civilization, that we should be naming and claiming you as one of our most blessed members of society?
Speaking of your amazing love story with Nicole, you met at G'day Australia. Is that what it was called?
G'day LA.
G'day LA.
Yeah.
If you hadn't both been there that day, would your paths somewhere have inevitably crossed? Or maybe this incredible
probably.
life story wouldn't have happened?
No, I think it would.
Yeah? Are you a believer in fate, or do you think as two Australians it would have happened?
No idea.
I just often think that if you weren't at that event, maybe you don't have the same friendship group, it may never have happened.
Well,
Never know.
You never know.
it's fate. It's the universe.
Anyway, moving on.
I think so. You'd like to think so.
I just feel like Keith Urban puts out a couple of songs from time to time, but like, has there ever been just a real bop by Keith Urban? Have you ever just been like, we got to put that song on? So, I mean, I guess what my question here is, what the collective confusion as to how this could have happened? How didn't it happen sooner, I think is what we should be asking ourselves. How did they both manage this so long? As we discussed last time when we were together, she was over there running a cabal of Satanists in Australia, just preying off all of these college students and children who happened to cross her path. You know, I wouldn't even call it hearsay necessarily, because we have an eyewitness to the accounts who says that she was used and abused at the hands of both Nicole and her father. But she's the only witness we have. We don't have like a plethora of different accounts naming Nicole as somebody who abused them back in Australia. But putting all that aside, I mean, I bring it up because what kind of marriage could you have if the person had spent their youth basically buying and selling souls to the devil? You know what I'm saying? It's like, I feel like if she's been up to no good through most of her youth, she probably doesn't make a stellar wife. But then at the same time, we'll have to put that to the side. What I'm telling you right now is that Nicole Kidman has systematically chosen roles that are very strange and feel like it's kind of like her telling you what's really going on in her life without you ever being able to pin anything. It always feels like she's taunting you. Eyes Wide Shut was a crazy, weird movie, which I don't even think I've seen the whole thing. I saw enough of it to be like, what the literal F is this? And shut that mess down. It gave me bad vibes. And then recently she's been in a lot of movies where she's with very young men, and she kind of has this sort of predatory sense, and her interviews have been weird. So I don't know who she is. I think that's the thing. I don't know who she is. And we know that Keith is, as described, almost derelict when it comes to his addiction. So, you know, she's managed to patch him up, and she's managed to hide who she really is. But this whole relationship always seemed like a really contrived, pressure-filled, we're just trying to hold it together kind of union. And yeah, of course they're not together. Meanwhile, he does seem like he's going off the rails, okay? Because in January, he fired his entire band. He'd been with them for 25 years, but no more, you know? And now he's gotten together another group of people with a girl named Maggie who thinks it's 2018 and cannot take off her felt hat. Every time I see this girl, I'm like, is that just the way y'all walk around in Nashville? I know y'all are up to date. Y'all can't still be wearing this. This is some like Instagram boutique look, right? But he keeps changing lyrics to his songs that have been tributes to Nicole, and it's directing them to this new guitarist of his. Gross vibes. Because, like, you know, man, you're in the middle of a divorce. I know that you just feel like, you know, F you to Nicole because things aren't working out, and, you know, she's had to stand by you all this time, and you really resent that she's made her name on basically having to be your husband, and you've had to be asked about her in every interview, and he's been real bitter about that for a good bit now. But don't be trashy, man, standing up there with your new guitarist, you know, throwing little smiles and looks over to her, changing lyrics that used to be for Nicole to this girl. See, let me just say, if I were Maggie, I'd be like, write me a new song, man. I don't want that song about your wife that saved you from your addiction. That's the whole thing you're mad about, that everybody is globbed on to this story about how Nicole saved you, and but for her, you know, you'd be dead in a gutter somewhere. I don't need that song. Please don't change the lyrics from that song and give it to me. That's how I feel if I was this Maggie, right? But she's over there thinking it's the cutest and has posted these videos of him changing lyrics, kind of being like, oh my gosh, man, what? You guys, did you hear it? He sang it to me. It used to be Nicole's song, but not anymore. I don't need it. See, Maggie is young and dumb, and he will have to deal with that when he leaves Nicole, who has had a whole life of hiding her trash so that nobody knows what's really going on with her. She could have definitely helped him hide his business. But see, he didn't want that, you know. So I guess he thinks he's just too good for it. And now he's on to bigger and better, I suppose. Anyway, so that story was all I could see all week long. I was sick and tired of it, and I'm done talking about it. Let's move on. Something else that has dominated, just truly dominated the headlines. Of course, the conspiracies abound about the Kirk assassination. It's really a pity that we can't just let people get on with the investigation so that we can, figure out what happens. I think this is my problem here. I understand that all the internet sleuths are like, they need to know that we are on it so that they can't just throw us a bunch of trash when it actually comes to the trial. Like, don't bring us a bunch of bad evidence to the trial because we weren't on it this whole time. Like, you guys need to feel the pressure because we're looking and analyzing and all this stuff. And so I feel like that's why people are not able to be hands off in this scenario in a way that I think would be helpful. Because right now they're just really muddying the waters. There's all these conspiracy theorists that are just muddying the waters and just coming up with wild allegations, saying wild things. It's gotten to the point now where it's like, at the very beginning of this, I was very invested in what happened. What aren't we being told? I didn't like the letters and the notes that had gone on between the killer and the lover. I thought that was very fraudulent sounding. So at first I was invested in what people were saying, and then I started to get gross vibes because it felt like people were demanding information, that were coming up with things that weren't true. And I found enough inconsistencies. I made a video about that. Found enough inconsistencies that were being repeated over and over and over and just whipping people up into a fury that I thought, I just don't want to invest myself in this kind of conspiracy anymore. Like, why is the base story not good enough? The base story that Tyler Robinson was radicalized online, was invested in a community that he felt was being disrespected by conservatives, and then went out to take the most conservative voice that he could at an event where he was capable of doing it because the security was lax. Why do we need to add to that? That's already a really sad modern tale of how divisive the internet can be. I think we're just desensitized to how divisive the internet is, that to us, that's not a radical story. That is a radical story. This person went and killed somebody because he had developed an idea of who this person was and what their goals and ideals were, that he felt it would be best to silence this person before they could talk any longer. That's radical. That's a crazy story. But no, we have to now be telling all kinds of narratives that TPUSA was in on it, and I would say the person leading the charge here is Candace Owens. Now, after I made that last video where I was like, she is not a good source, we do not need to listen to Candace Owens, I stand by that 100%. And at this point, is it possible to say 1,000%? She has crashed out so hard that I can't believe that she is even up and alive and able to come again with yet another episode. This is a person who immediately upon the death began to profit off of her quote-unquote friend's death with episodes that she was monetizing, doing ad reads for, and promising more content behind a paywall. To me, if I was really invested in figuring out the death of my friend, I can tell you right now that if I was a multimillionaire many times over and so was my husband, I would not be monetizing the content that I was doing in order to find his killer. I think if I wanted to legitimize my concern, I would make sure I didn't make a damn dime on it. And if I did make any money, I would say at the top of every episode, every single cent that I make on these episodes are going straight to Erica Kirk and her family, going straight to the family of my dear friend. Never once has she raised money for Erica, never once has she raised money for TPUSA, and it's probably because now she's saying that they're at fault. At the beginning of this, she said the only people who can stop me are my husband and Erica Kirk. Well, now she's basically saying Erica Kirk did it, so I guess Erica's lost her standing to stop Candace. The thing that's wild to me about Candace is that she seems to assume that the entire world owes her something. I know she has millions of people who watch her, but there's a ton of YouTube channels that have millions of followers. There's zero reason why anybody owes a YouTuber anything. Why does she think that the president's wife of France owes her personal, private DNA or evidence that she was born a woman? She's provided pictures and all kinds of things, but it's never good enough. Candace is always like, no. I'll debunk it this way. That's the thing about a conspiracy theorist. You can always give them evidence of what they've asked for, but they will always find a way to say that's not true because my narrative is this. And they're so biased against anything that contradicts their conspiracy. It's hopeless to try with these people. But Candace has switched the story so many times. She started out saying that she thought that it was the Israelis who had done it, saying that Benjamin Netanyahu, when he unwisely came out the day after the assassination to claim Charlie as his own and waved around a letter saying that, this letter is from Charlie and it's basically a love letter from Charlie. Candace said, that's a real letter, but he's not saying what's true. He's just pulled out different lines. And I'm here to tell you that that was a letter that completely tore Benjamin Netanyahu down, so that he was no good, yada, yada, yada. And so she was very indignant. That letter's going to come out, and she claimed this as one of her receipts as to how Charlie had turned against Israel. And yet, when the letter is released and authenticated and says exactly what Benjamin Netanyahu suggested, that this was a person who really cared about Israel, so much so that the letter is giving examples to Israel of how they might better the information campaign about their own country. Charlie was very invested in helping Israel to turn the narrative around about itself. Suddenly, Candace is going to try to throw shade, throw doubt. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, that letter, I don't know. Was it an email? Was it a typed copy? I mean, I don't know. Like, that's really going to make a difference as to whether the words are true or not, or whether they came from Charlie. You know, it's been authenticated. People in his inner circle, like, yes, Charlie wrote that letter. I knew that he wrote that letter. That is the letter we sent. But suddenly it's like, I don't know, you guys. This is a person who should have been a lawyer. Because let me tell you, she is peddling that reasonable doubt with every word she says. Because she doesn't prove things, but she's great at planting seeds of doubt in your mind. She will tell you all kinds of things, but she doesn't have any actual sources. Because she has shunned any kind of authentic sources, any kind of actual source that might have been played around with, by the elite, always seeming to forget that she is the elite. She's married to the son of somebody in the House of Lords. She, by every estimate, would be in the elite circle, yet she's always throwing shade at this group of people, right? It doesn't make any sense to me. But Candace is unable to accept anything from any official source, but she will take anything anybody tells her from the tip line. She will find any rabbit hole on Reddit as a solid source. And look, people could be sending her true things on her tip line. I'm not saying every person who types something in on Reddit is telling you a lie, but what I am saying is this. You can't verify this. There's no... At this point, she has positioned herself where she's going to reject official narratives, and she will take anything from anybody that anyone tells her. And so she always gets to be right. Because they're telling me lies over here, but anything I find over here is good. And she can just kind of weasel and pick apart whatever she wants in order for her story to be true. Case in point. This week, I saw a little bit of footage being peddled around by a lot of different content creators. And it's some footage that this one channel, it's called Milk Bar TV. They're very dedicated to disliking Candace, but they compiled footage from Candace's show in which she is saying one thing, but then showing the reality of it. One of the examples that they showed is that Candace said that she didn't believe the notes that had gone between the murderer and his lover, that these messages didn't sound authentic to her, which was something we all agreed on. The style of the writing was strange. Some of the terms were strange. But one of the words she really wasn't sure about and really insisted that nobody ever uses is the word vehicle. I think I even repeated that, although as I thought about it later, I thought, well, I can think of times when I've said vehicle. Also, Tyler Robinson's dad is in law enforcement, so he may have used the word vehicle. And also, when you consider Tyler's lifestyle, it is not normal according to what normal is usually defined on. This is a person who was living with their gay lover who was in transition and was very invested in a furry community. So I sometimes think that us saying, well, this doesn't sound like the way a typical person would write, I would not categorize his lifestyle as typical. So I think it's interesting we want him to be typical in this context, but are willing to accept he wasn't typical over here. Anyway, he writes this long thing and says the word vehicle, and she's like, see, red flag. I want to ask you right now why anyone would say vehicle when you know that nobody ever uses that word. And that was her big proof that this whole thing was fake. Okay, so footage had come up of him at a traffic stop, which she played for us, in which he was referring to his car as his car and not calling it a vehicle. So she said, see, there we go.
There is 2022 police body cam footage, in case you missed that, of Tyler making a crash report. Take a listen.
Your mom's on her way?
Yeah, she's gonna be a minute. She's got to shuttle over from where she's at to her car and then drive over.
Gotcha.
His mother was going to shuttle over from her car? Interesting.
That is such pathetic evidence. Because even if, in this instance, he happened to call his car, that doesn't mean that he couldn't have said vehicle in another context. This is not all the times he ever had an opportunity to use the word, in the note and in the video. Right? But it gets so much worse. Because she plays that part of the video in order for you to hear him say car. So she can say, see, gotcha. Case closed. Cutting off for you the part where he actually uses the word vehicle. In its full context, this police cam footage of him at a traffic stop has him saying car in one sentence, but then vehicle in the next. Yet she conveniently doesn't show you that part.
Yeah, I was looking up at the light just before getting there. I saw it shift yellow. And as I get into the intersection, there was a vehicle in the lane.
That is Candace Owens. Okay? Similarly, the letter from Bibi Netanyahu, she said that letter that he sent was true. That's originally what she said. Charlie Kirk really sent him a letter. Look how he's pulling out sentences to prove his point. It looks to me like he's a liar, because if he was telling you the truth, then he wouldn't need to just pull out a few sentences. Omission is still lying, she says. Well, we know that, Candace. My question is, do you? And then there's all of these times, again, from Milk Bar TV, that show Candace using the word vehicle, even though she claimed that that was some weird kind of police lingo that no human ever uses.
Was particularly asking him to determine who owned a white vehicle, and everyone locally had looked at this vehicle and said, I can help you to just figure out more about this vehicle. And suddenly a president gets shot in a moving vehicle. November 22nd, 1963, JFK was shot. President JFK was shot sitting alongside his wife in a vehicle.
See, so I'm just telling you right now, this is not a reliable person. Now she's going so far as to say that Tyler Robinson wasn't even on the campus. She has it by a source. A source has told her Tyler wasn't even on the campus. He'd never even been there that day. He didn't know anything about being there that day. And they're all just trying to pin this on him, right? She's got this huge story about that. What I don't understand is, why is it that she's always trying to protect these sources? I can't, for his safety, I can't. But now you are becoming everyone's source. Now you're the one who told me. So whatever force you think is going to come down on this individual who told you this information, why do you think that source of evil is not going to come after you now that you've told a much bigger platform, your millions of people who follow you? Aren't you worried for your life? Oh no, because she's so brave. She just wants you to think she's so brave. She's no threat to anyone, because all she's doing is coming up with more trash and more weirdness day after day after day.
In fact, explicitly what it was a Polish underground symbol, like a Polish communist underground symbol that nobody would have recognized outside of people who know what it meant. And I just sort of went, okay, that's weird. I kept looking online, and strangely, I'm not kidding, I'm going to show you these messages, I came across what looked to me like a bunch of people talking about bees. You're going, like literally bees. In a way that the only way I can describe it, she was like, they were speaking about bees, but they weren't speaking about bees. It was very coded.
Were speaking about bees, but they weren't speaking about bees. It was very coded.
No one's scared of Candace Owens at this point because she's talking crazy. Now she's trying to say that TPUSA had something to do with Charlie Kirk's murder. The wildness of this is beyond comprehension. I don't know which one it is with her, because her latest push towards who did it is TPUSA, even though she will also tell you that 48 hours before Charlie Kirk died, he had officially turned his back on the Jews. And then secondly, he was promising that he was going to bring Candace Owens back. And then I guess after that proclamation, the group just rose up in great organized indignation and shot their leader. I mean, that just doesn't even make sense. Candace Owens is peddling things as hard as she can to pretend that TPUSA really, was out to get Charlie. Yet mysteriously, he was going to try to bring her back. I mean, why didn't we hear about this before? Right? Why are we just now hearing that he wanted to bring you back? Seems to me that if his big plan was to turn his back on Israel and bring you in, basically recreate TPUSA and Candace Owens' current image, it seems like that would have been a conversation he would have had with her recently. Being like, Candace, you've been right about Israel. They really are out to lunch. We really need to bring you back in your energy. And yet the last communication she's been able to show us was something from way back in May, right? But no current conversation was ever had. But suddenly she knows. Who told her this? Who told her, he wanted to bring you back 48 hours before his death? That's what he said. And so, again, is it all about Candace? Because it's almost like she's saying he was killed for wanting me. I was the reason why they finally had to take him out. Candace, why don't you go take care of those 4 kids you have? Okay? Why don't you go make your husband a sandwich, since you say you're real big on that? Use your time more wisely. Okay. Now, I'm so done with that. But something else that was in the news this week that I could not even believe. It was kind of like last week, sort of this week. You guys, folks need to start reading their Bibles. This is insane. I saw so many people who were up in arms about believing the rapture was coming. Now, if you're not a religious type, you might not know what this is. There are some people in some circles who think that before the world gets real bad, that Jesus is going to come up and scoop up his own, and we're all going to go up to heaven. And I don't know about the rest of you guys, but you're just going to be left here to kind of slog it out. Okay. I don't know about that narrative. I mean, it just seems to me that if the world has not ended yet, I just don't imagine a world, and I just cannot find in the Bible where God's going to leave the ones who he has anointed with wisdom. He's going to remove those people and leave the people who are in darkness to sort of sort it out for themselves. Wouldn't he leave his anointed people, his children, to help those who don't know? I mean, I just don't even get that narrative. But anyway, there was somebody out there who's running around being like, hey, Jesus is coming. It's going to be on this specific date. So basically give away all your money, give away all your houses, give away everything because you won't need it. There's going to be a lot of needy people running around who don't know Jesus, who aren't getting saved. So you just give them all your stuff and then just prepare to go. So many people bought into this. I'm like, you guys not remember the verses when Jesus was like, nobody knows the date and time of my return, not even me? I mean, I'm so confused. Well, there's lots of like nameless, faceless individuals who were just giving away all their stuff, and like a lot of people like making social media about, hey, if you need any money, here's my information. I'll send you some money. People like crying, I just found out Jesus is coming back. I just don't even know if I'm ready yet. And weeping and crying and carrying on. I'm like, open your Bible, people. You wouldn't have to be scared for no reason if you would just read your Bible. But anyway, one person who really believed this was Sherry Shepherd. Do you remember Sherry Shepherd? Okay. Sherry Shepherd, I feel like the last time I heard about her was when she lost a lot of weight. Okay, well, but anyway, she had decided that because the rapture was going to come, she didn't need to worry about paying her parking tickets or just any kind of ticket that she had. Don't worry about the bills, because she didn't need to pay for her bills. Jesus was going to rapture her out. And so, the bills would be as next to nothing. Proceeded not to pay any of her bills. She has just spent 8 days in jail because she was not paying these unpaid parking tickets. And Jesus, by the way, did not come back. This is such idiocy. I couldn't believe the emotional outbursts, the crying, the weeping, but then also the unwarranted joy and the just giving away of major assets, houses, cars, huge amounts of money from their bank accounts because they believed Jesus was coming on the basis of some joker they don't even know making some content online about it, and everyone's like, oh, well, since he said so. Don't you think a couple of other pastors might know a few things? Wouldn't you want to verify that before you're just giving your house away? Sherry Shepherd, I guess, didn't spend 8 days in jail. Okay. Somebody else who's basically spending some time in jail would be Thomas Markle. Now, you know that Thomas Markle went in to live in the Philippines. Thomas Markle is a huge question mark to me. Mostly because I don't understand what he's doing in Thailand and the Philippines, and I just have a feeling it's not on the up and up. But anyway, he was living in a high rise. He's old, he's ill, he's not well, he can't walk. And there was an earthquake, and he's been trapped in the building. We know this because his daughter Samantha was posting about it on social media. She's very upset, very, very angry that her father has found himself in this situation. Yes, but also he chose to move to the Philippines when he's in ill health and not able to walk. Now, Samantha has her own health journey and her own health problems, so she hasn't been able to help her dad, I guess, in the way that she would want. But she is also simultaneously very angry at Meghan Markle, as we know. And she has come out to criticize Meghan constantly and continually to a point where I feel like it's not helpful to Samantha's image. It's like, well, I totally understand feeling like left in the dust as this girl climbs up the social ladder, marries a prince, and is living the high life, and you're over there struggling. And she tries to act like she doesn't even know you. I get it, but then Samantha, the way you're acting would make me want to pretend I don't know you either. I mean, in all honesty, So anyway, she posts this bit of, updating the world about her father, right? Well, we do care about Thomas Markle being trapped, but then I feel like she kind of degrades her care and concern because she uses it as another opportunity to rant and rave against Meghan, and is cursing Meghan out, adding to the thread where she just another message. This is Meghan's fault. This is what karma looks like. F you, Meghan, and all this. And I'm like, well, Meghan didn't cause the earthquake. You know, I mean, she's acting as though Meghan put the man up in a high rise and then called on the demons from the pits of hell to shake the foundation of the house so that her crippled father would be trapped without any hope. And it only makes us feel like Meghan might have been right to say, I need to distance myself from this. You know, Samantha could be right, but she's making herself sound wrong. Do you know what I'm saying? She's just not making herself sound like the soundest person in the room. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of this. I was watching this Netflix documentary, and it was this woman who had given her child up for adoption and was devastated to find out 30 years later that her child had not gone to a happy home, and that at the hands of these adoptive parents, she believed that her daughter had been killed and buried in their backyard. So she was devastated about it and felt that the police weren't doing enough about it. So she really, took this on as her own cause in her later years, and went up to the town, put billboards out, put signs out, and then made it very well known in the town that this adopted father was the reason that her daughter was dead and that he'd killed her. And she would go in front of their house, just pace up and down in front of their house, take drones, fly it around their property. She'd call them 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 in the morning, just making herself a real nuisance. Posting all kinds of stuff on Facebook, cussing them out, calling all kinds of things, saying they were doing all these things. Well, lo and behold, in the end, the guy had killed her adopted daughter and had buried her in the backyard. And her maternal instinct had known this before she ever had actual proof. Well, I completely see her anger and her sadness and the survivor guilt of feeling like I'd given up my daughter for adoption, thinking she was going to go to a better home than I could give her. But I know I wouldn't have killed her. She would have been alive with me. I can see anger at herself and feeling like I have to get justice for her to validate the mistake that I made in giving her up for adoption to this family. Although, to her credit, she had no idea who the baby was going to. Anyway, all this to say, you can be completely 110% in your view of somebody, but the way you conduct yourself can degrade from your opinion of the situation. You can be right. But in the case of the woman in the Netflix documentary, harassing the family who you believed had done it is not the right way. And she almost crossed boundaries where then she would have been, criminally liable for certain harassing behaviors. And I know that's not what she wanted. She just wanted to put pressure where she felt pressure had never been placed. And the same with Samantha Markle. I feel like, hey, Samantha, you can completely dislike Meghan and feel like she was unfair to you, your family, and that she has not honored the family name in the way that she might, and has not honored your father in the way that she might. But getting online with this kind of mess is not beneficial to your storyline. Okay, moving right along. Let's talk about, so long as we're talking about true crime, you guys know that story of the girl named Laken Snelling who was a cheerleader at the University of Kentucky. And then we did talk about this, but only briefly. We didn't have a lot of information, but more information came out this week. This is the girl who was the competitive cheerleader. And then she had a baby in her dorm room. And then the baby was discovered in a trash bag. And that's pretty much all we knew. We didn't know when the baby had been born. We didn't know if it was a stillborn, if it was a preemie. We didn't know if anybody knew that she was pregnant. What did she do afterward? We knew nothing. Well, now we know some things. Now, at this point, right now, she's being charged of abuse of a corpse, tampering with physical evidence, and then concealing a birth. But she's not being charged with murder yet. Although she should be, because she went into labor in the middle of the night, about 4 a.m. And she said that she gave birth to a baby full term and that the baby was alive at the time that it was born. She sort of downplayed how alive it was, saying that it was whimpering a little bit and that it was kind of moving around a little bit. Then she says that and this is not clear, that she fell asleep, but fell asleep on top of the baby. After giving birth, she was so worn out, she fell asleep. That's not unusual, but seems to me that if you had care or concern for the baby, you would have wrapped the baby up. And then even if you are planning on going to bed, you'd go to bed with the baby. She clearly wasn't prepared to have the baby in her dorm room. It's not like she had a crib or something. But it seems like you would have created some environment for the child to stay alive. But no, she falls on top of the baby. So it's not clear. Is she trying to say she passed out on the baby, like I fainted from the exertion of having labor? Or if she intentionally fell asleep on the baby to suffocate it, and then when she woke up, oh, the baby's blue, right? So then she goes about the business cleaning up the mess. She's got cleaning supplies. She's got paper towels and stuff. She's got to clean up the blood. She puts the placenta in a plastic bag. Then she puts the placenta and the cleaning supplies and the baby wrapped in a towel into a black garbage bag. And then she throws the black garbage bag into her closet for fiddly-dee. I'll think about that tomorrow. Then, oh my gosh, it's time to go to class. So she goes to her car and drives to class, although she doesn't make it in because she's not feeling great. You can imagine she just had a baby. And so then she sits in the parking lot and she doesn't go in. And then she decides, since I don't feel good, I guess I'll order McDonald's because that'll make me feel a hell of a lot better. So she orders some McDonald's through the app. Then she goes to McDonald's, picks up the food, sits in the parking lot, eats the food, thinks about going to the clinic, decides not to. And that's how things worked out for her that day. Meanwhile, her friends are like, what the heck happened to Lakin last night? Because we heard some things. And they heard some bumping and carrying on upstairs. And so they decide they're going to go into her room and they're going to have a look around. Because you know what? Lakin's been looking weird lately. And they've had their suspicions. Lakin was on social media a lot. She was very into herself. That's the problem with social media. It really exposes how self-centered we really are. Anyway, she was always posting pictures of herself in different outfits, pictures of herself singing, all these pictures where she thought she was looking real cute, So very big social media presence, constantly on her phone, taking videos and pictures of everything at all the time. Then about the spring, she stopped posting. And it seems to correlate with as she began to show more as a pregnant person, she wasn't looking to advertise that anymore. But we do have pictures of what she was looking like. This is how Lakin looked before the pregnancy, and this is what she was looking like at an event 4 months before she gave birth. So evidently showing that she's pregnant. This is not the freshman 15 that we're all so accustomed to. You can see she's carrying weight in her stomach. So it feels very evident that her friend's suspicions were well-founded. So while she's at class trying to decide what she's going to do next and eating her McDonald's, her friends are going through her things and they find the baby in the trash bag and they call the police. Okay. This is obviously hugely horrific. And I think one of the things that's so sad for a number of reasons is that, one, she had deluded herself into believing that no one would help her. That if she were to tell anybody what had happened, she would be shunned completely. And that it was better not to tell anybody. So she has no community around her. Two, she had convinced herself that it would be better to kill this baby and be a murderer than it would be to be a young mom. Something had told her that she needed to edit out, filter out this reality so she could keep going on with her other one. And I think my third thing that was really sad to me is you're looking at somebody whose very life was very much formed around the social media presence that they were putting forward. That's who they wanted you to think that they were. And on social media, I mean, you can edit pictures, you can put on filters, you can take out this person from the background, that person from the background. And she had applied her social media existence to the situation in her actual life. Oh, oops, I had a baby. I'm going to edit the baby out. And think she could keep going on with her regular life. Like, oh, I edited that out and I can keep posting the picture. Oh, I edited the baby out. I'm going to go to class. What are you talking about? And of course you can't keep going. You just murdered a baby. She knew the baby was alive. The baby was whimpering and twitching. At any time, she could have called the police then and said, I've had a baby. I didn't tell anybody and I don't know what to do. She could have, there's plenty of people who would want to adopt that baby, take care of that baby, It could have gone on to live. If she didn't feel prepared to be a mother, that's okay. There's lots of people who want to help you. But she wasn't in communication with anybody. And what is the deal with all these girls who we thought she was pregnant, but we didn't say anything. And then later we went into her room to see if she'd actually had the baby and lo and behold, there it is in the trash bag. Well, girls, if you knew that she was pregnant, why didn't any one of you say, Lakin, is everything okay? Lakin, you can be honest with us. We want to help you. Hey, I'm gonna take you. Let's go together to the nearest pregnancy center. Let's go get an ultrasound. Let's make sure. Let's get excited. Let's go look at baby things. That group of friends, instead of talking about her behind her back and being like, Lakin's getting fat. Why didn't they do anything? Why didn't they say anything? Why didn't they help her? Why weren't they friends? Instead, they're snooping around her room, finding all this stuff and calling the police on her instead of being true friends that could have helped her and helped the life of that baby. If they suspected she was pregnant, why didn't they help her? Enough already of this. Oh, Lakin's getting fat. Yeah, well, you're a useless friend. Friend, if you can even say that. It's just, it's devastating. I think the other thing that's really strange is, while she was in labor, she was taking pictures of herself in labor, which is so indicative of a culture that feels that they have to document every single thing, take pictures and videos of everything. And even she was like, I better not have this on my phone anymore. This is kind of weird. And had deleted those pictures. So it seems weird because, you know, she's trying to paint this picture of a person who was like, I don't know, I just suddenly was, I was doing irrational things. Well, you were rational enough to want to document the fact that you were having a baby, pretty big event. You're rational enough to have cleaning supplies available. You're rational enough to put your placenta in a Ziploc bag and clean up your room and put all the things together in a bag. You know, you were rational enough to, I guess, go to class. I mean, like, which part is the part where she says she just, I don't know, I just lost it? Was it the part when she saw a living baby and decided she'd fall down on it and suffocated to death? I mean, that is irrational behavior. But, like, what led to that? You know? It's sad. I feel like social media is just creating these monsters. And you do see these studies where they say that there's this uptick in narcissism, which can be directly related to social media. But what a narcissistic thing to do. Like, oh, this baby, oh gosh, I had a baby. God, what am I going to do with that? You know? And then just deleting it from her life. You know, just, oops, I didn't want that picture in my highlight reel. I mean, they need to be studying what happened to this girl and the way that she looked at the arrival of that baby as a direct link to the way that she was married to social media and everything in her life. She'd stopped seeing that real life is very different from what you're doing online. And there is a connection there, without a doubt. Okay, we got a couple of tidbits here. Another story, by the way, that was in the media all over the place was the story of Selena Gomez. She got married this weekend to her little friend Benny. Benny, man, it's like you almost have to like him just because, I mean, what an unlikely pair. But he seems to like her. There's a lot of people who hate on him, who say that he tries to like dim her star. I don't see how that's what he's doing. I think he doesn't go for pretense, and so I think that if he senses any kind of pretense somewhere, like his immediate reaction is to kind of try to disassemble that and like let's just get down and be normal people. And so I think that there's some people who see that as him trying to dim her star, but I think what he's trying to do is help her to realize it's okay to be you. Right? Anyway, so the wedding was a big thing. Obviously, everyone's like, oh my gosh, Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran, oh my gosh, a star-studded event. Okay, well, bride looked very beautiful and all this, but I think the story here really is, and I'm sure you've heard this, there was one very suspiciously absent guest. That would be the person who gave Selena a kidney. That's right, the kidney donor was not at the wedding. Okay, the kidney donor, whose name is Francia Reza, she'd given her a kidney because Selena had lupus, and she was very weak, and she was going to need a kidney, or she wasn't going to make it. And Francia says that one day Selena was at her house. They were just talking about one thing or another. Selena reaches into the fridge to grab a bottle of water. She is so weak, apparently, that she cannot open the bottle of water. And in a fit of rage and despair, she throws the bottle of water to the ground and then falls to the ground herself. Francia is like, what in the... why are you acting like that? And Selena says, it's my kidney. It's failing, and I can't get a donor for the next 20 years. And so Rhea's like, well, I'll get tested. Maybe I could be a donor. And she was, and so she gives a kidney. Over the course of the years, because this was a while ago, this is 2017, there's been different reports as to whether they're still friends or not. I don't really know, and I'm not invested in whether they're friends or not. I mean, that's their business. You know, most of the time people don't know they're organ donors. So there's not this implied friendship necessary. And I suppose it would be hard to figure out what exactly you're supposed to do if one of your friends does give you a kidney. How much do you have to keep saying thank you for that? But it does seem like a wedding invitation might be one minor gesture that you could give to say thank you. As long as we're talking about paying honor and tribute to people, let's talk about the colossal mistake that was made about this recent Tina Turner statue. Look at the way these people decide to pay tribute to Tina Turner. Guys, people are angry. Why does she look like that? It's like they thought the statue was going to be one size, so they were beginning a head that was going to be one size for a statue, and then they realized, oh wait, we're running out of bronze. And so they had to like drastically reduce the size of the body. But why is the head so bad? It feels like two different artists made this. needless to say, people are outraged. What do you guys think? It's pretty bad. And then finally, my final little headline for you. Jennifer Lopez is here again. Jennifer Lopez did this really long CBS morning interview where it was super awkward because I felt like the host kept trying to hurt her feelings, but she was going to not let him hurt her feelings. And so he's like this unsmiling, serious type. And he keeps asking her all kinds of things and she keeps responding, and he's making it really awkward. It was a really awkward interview. And this is the thing that I feel like a lot of times we want our interviewers to ask the hard-hitting questions. But I wonder, is there a way to ask the hard-hitting questions and still be a personable individual? Somebody who's like not like this cold wall of steel who just makes it awkward the whole time. So he asked her a bunch of questions about Ben Affleck, and she's like, yeah, it was a terrible time, but I really learned a lot about myself. All the things you'd expect her to say. But the part of the conversation I want to highlight for you is, I do have to say, it would be hard if you were him and you were sitting with somebody who is in such a world of delusion. And he is not here to believe any of it. She tells him that she has a voice that is really fitted for Broadway. And that, you know, people think they know what she sounds like, but that's actually not what her voice is like. And that her whole growing up years, she would love to listen to records of Broadway musicals, and that she would just go around singing, and people are always blown away by the quality of her voice.
When you say you have a voice that's more suited to theater as opposed to the stage.
I have said that, and it's true.
What does that mean?
When I grew up singing musicals because I loved musicals. And I remember going to my first Broadway show, and it was how I learned to sing. And so that's kind of how I trained my own voice. So then when I started singing pop music and stuff, it was like nobody knew that I could sing in that way. And then when I started singing these songs, and if I sang My Man Somewhere from Barbra Streisand or something, people were like, oh my God, you can sing like that? And I was like, yeah, actually, I prefer singing in that way. That to me is more my natural voice.
Then why is it that you have chosen to do this lesser sounding voice? No one's going to say that Jennifer Lopez isn't a performer, okay? She can get up there and dance and gyrate and carry on, okay? She's always got something going on. She's a performer, but she's not a singer. And for her to be trying to tell us and to act like this is like, you know, just a true thing about her, and that, you know, you guys don't even realize what a powerhouse she is, but that she is a singer who has just somehow never bothered to debut this beautiful voice she says she has. Why would that be? Why am I over here burdened by your fantasy, I ask you? Why do I have to sit here and pretend with you that you have a powerhouse voice that you just, for some inexplicable reason, never decided to debut? You can't stop telling people about it, because this is like the second time I've heard her mention what a great voice she has. Something almost akin to Whitney Houston I heard her one time say, sister, please. Why does she keep doing this? Why does she keep needing us to believe that this is a reality? I understand completely now why Ben was like, I can't do this. I thought I could. I tried. I think I can. I know I can't. Okay. And I understand why he is a little engine that can't. Because this relationship with Jennifer was just not meant to be. But how could you maintain a relationship with somebody who is so in active delusion? I could not be. Speaking of delusion, here is my final story for you. I said the Jennifer thing was, but I forgot. Let's sign off with our usual, we don't trust AI, okay? You guys, this past week, when I was researching for certain pictures and hopefully I was looking for some video footage to show you in our story about Sarah Ferguson. And she was in this show called Surviving Life. And it did make it to TV. Very few viewers. But I Googled Surviving Life with Sarah Ferguson, right? AI gives me this jacked up description of what I'm looking for. Okay, AI is trying to tell me that surviving life is a phrase that describes the fact that Sarah Ferguson, despite what everybody thought about her, was and goes on to tell me this tale. I know that's not true, AI. I know that's not true. It's a TV show that she was in, that she hosted. Okay, but it's just acting like, you know who AI is? AI is the annoying person in your friend group who is always citing statistics that you know they could not possibly know. Okay, as it turns out, There's a name for this, okay? And I'm just going to play you this little reel because she says it way better than me.
Okay, I just want to caution you guys about something very scary in the world of social media right now. Earlier today, I was watching a video of a girl trying to prove her point about something utilizing a conversational feature with ChatGPT. I utilize ChatGPT. I like ChatGPT, but let me show you a conversation that I had with ChatGPT a couple weeks ago. I was asking it questions about habit formation, and it pulled up this study. It said, in fact, one study found that when people commit to a 3-week habit change, about 80% of them keep going. I was like, holy crap, that's crazy. This piqued my interest, and I said, just for my information, cite the source. I had so many more questions. I was like, I want to see this entire study. This sounds actually remarkable. And the response I got was, I couldn't find a single study that says 80% of participants stick with a 3-week challenge. So then I obviously asked, explain your thought process. Where did that 80% number come from? AI takeaway. AI is really good at producing something that sounds like what a human expert might say, but unless it's explicitly tied to a cited source, numbers can be invented or hallucinated. That's why your instinct to ask for the study was 100% right. So I pried further. Is AI constructed to help me prove my point, even if my point is inaccurate? And the response again, yes. I can unintentionally help you prove your inaccurate point if you set me up that way. But if you ask me to fact check, cross-examine, or provide sources, I'll shift gears into more skeptical research role instead of persuasion. So again, just a reminder, if you are listening to influencers who are using ChatGPT to prove a point, or if you yourself are trying to use ChatGPT to do research, make sure that you don't go into hallucination mode. Focus on actual research mode.
Do we need anything more from this AI? No. At this point, we now know it's lying to us. And this isn't the first one I've heard of this, okay? I've had my suspicions a while, and now I've caught it telling me a couple of lies. Just making stuff up, just so that you can sound like you know after you go and consult AI. That's not the point of AI. AI needs to tell me I don't know. Don't make stuff up. I don't need that. If I wanted to make up a bunch of shit, I could do that myself, right? AI is supposed to aid me in life. Instead, it's just taking away all kinds of stuff. Artificial intelligence is exactly what we have here, okay? So, as my usual ending statement, let's get off our phones. Let's take a break. Let's pick Saturday or Sunday. Let's just do a day where we're phone free. Let's just let the technology out of our life for a day. Because look, you might like to use it. You might find it helpful. Okay, but how helpful is it if it's lying to us? I ask you. Okay. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a great day, a great rest of your weekend. And on Monday, if you're enjoying our book about Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, we are going to keep plugging away. It's been great. I will tell you that the last 2 episodes that were about Epstein, I believe, were shadow banned. The engagement on that series dropped dramatically. And maybe you guys just aren't interested in that topic anymore. Like maybe you're just like, oh, I'm so sick of hearing about Andrew and Epstein. I'm not interested in it. I find it very interesting. When I compare other videos that I've done about Epstein, I've also noticed really dropped engagement. So I'm interested to know what that's about. So anyway, if you missed the last 2 episodes because they didn't push those episodes out, there were, as usual, 4 episodes last week. So if you are behind, go and catch up, and we'll keep going on Monday with the book. All right, see you soon. Bye.